Well, Nigel, just doing a bit of squad stuff. You said last week that Cal was getting a sort of a specialist opinion on his injury. What's the latest with that?
Well, he'll be out for a few weeks. So outside of saying that, I don't know whether I can really give you any sort of realistic time frame. But he'll be out for a number of games, which is a disappointment for us and him. But there we go. It's a part of football, I'm afraid. So just have to deal with it.
Absolutely. And from the weekend, no bumps, bruises, nothing picked up.
It'll be the same squad for this game, and we've not picked up anything of any note. So we go into this next couple of games now with the same sort of squad. So hopefully we can negotiate tomorrow in the same sort of fashion.
And when you've got, and it's not the busiest run of games you've had all season, but you've got quite a lot coming up. Your natural instinct is to keep a team that's playing well. Do you have to temper that, knowing that there's going to be quite a lot of demands placed on particularly certain positions?
Yeah, I mean, look, we don't have a lot of depth at the back. We know that at the moment. Our front players get through an awful lot of high intensity work, so that's something for us to keep an eye on. But I think the big question is always whether do you freshen it up just to try and share the load, or do you keep the side together because they're doing well? And those are the big talking points for us as staff. And I think since you'll have noticed yourself, since the turn of the year, we've not really tinkered too much with it. We've just tried to keep things moving along with some sort of consistency. So whatever we do, either tomorrow or for Saturday, it's with our minds on what's best for the team, really, as much as anything. So I don't rule anything out, really.
And I suppose that's onto the alchemy of management, because you can have all the sort of the information, and actually knowing what the right decision to take is there's not a right and a wrong, is there?
Well, there is in other people's other people's eyes, but the Captain Hindsight Brigade and the Yeah But Brigade, they'll always have something to say. So I don't try and keep them happy, to be honest with you. I try and make decisions that I think and we think as a group of staff are right for the group, because it's impossible to keep everybody happy. So I try not to. In fact, I try to irritate them.
I'm sure you do. With Joe, we seem to be a little bit past where you were at the start of the season in terms of he couldn't play 3 games a week. Is he in that sort of thing now, or you still have to be a little bit cautious?
Well, no. I mean, even towards the back end of last year, if you remember, we talked about the fact that there was a confidence that he probably could, but in his interest and to minimise the risk, and because we had other options, we chose not to. And this season he's had a full pre-season, and he's had spells in the side, and then he's sort of lost his place and had to be patient. And look, all these types of things together can have influence on what an individual's sort of route looks like. And out of necessity as well, we need Joe at the moment, and he's playing well. He's had good influence off the bench too, which is also I think testament to how he's just gone about it, because he's been frustrated, there's no doubt about that, and I think he'd probably tell you that himself, but he's been able to control that and channel that sort of frustration into performance, and that's all you can ever ask. You don't want players to be happy not playing, and he certainly falls into the category of a player who it becomes a little bit more difficult to manage when he's not playing, just because of his the intensity of the type of person he is. But it's not a criticism; it's just a recognition of who he is. And now he's in the side. We want to keep him fit and available. And Joe Williams at his best is a really good player, and a player who can bring positive influences to our team. So all the players that we have different strengths and weaknesses, and they all have areas that we feel bring strengths to the team, and I think that's something that we always have to sort of recognise. But the bottom line is, the team is the most important thing, and players understanding how they fit into what the team needs is the key thing. I suppose it's a long-winded way of answering your question, but we're confident that he's in as good a position as he can be. But you can never ever rule out risk during games, because game situations are not controlled. Training sessions, we can control both the loading, the tempo, the mix of what we do for individuals in training. What we can't do in a game is control what happens out there on the field, and that is that there are too many variables for us to try and do that. But I'm really pleased that he's in a good place himself, and he's playing his part in what's been an upturn for the whole group. More importantly, it's changed our results, and that's the key factor.
Over the course of the season, when players put in particularly special performances, we end up talking about individuals. One player we haven't mentioned a lot because of, I think, the role he plays, but I think Matty James' understated way of going around things in midfield has just been key to what's happened over the last few games. I just want you to talk a little bit about him and what he's brought to this team, which isn't always eye-catching, but is vitally important.
It's eye-catching to us, and it's eye-catching to his teammates, and that's the most important thing. Look, there are players in sides which are in any group of players, any squad, who would be very visible in the public domain. But for me, the biggest compliment I could give Matty James would probably be that his teammates recognise his contribution. I don't think there's a greater compliment a manager could give to a player than that. And so outside of that, he's a good technician. He understands the game, and he's got the ability to influence his teammates. That's something which internally we value, and he knows his worth to the squad, whether he plays or whether he doesn't. But he's a very accomplished performer. He's got a Premier League medal.
It's not bad, is it? You take that. This weekend, or this Wednesday, sorry, we're going to give you a very different look to Norwich. Does that change the way you approach a game like this, in terms of knowing that you're probably going to get more possession of the ball, those kind of things?
Only in the sense that we need to be able to deal with how the game changes. Teams who maybe sit a bit deeper, the problems that you have against those sorts of sides are having enough patience to be able to break them down. They will present a really stern test to us. I don't think that they'll come here and just want to sit back. I think they'll want to try and press us early, but if they can't press us early, they will be difficult to break down, in the same way that we would see our task of playing against sides as being the same thing. It's not about because you're playing top or near the bottom of the league, do you have a different strategy for those games? Not necessarily. It's about being able to adjust during the game and being able to play or try and at least impose our way of playing on our opponents. And I'm sure they'll try and do that, and we will try and do that to them. Cast our mind back to the game at their place. I think it's a game we should have won. I think it's a game in which we didn't get decisions go our way again. We had a penalty turned down against them, which was ridiculous. They should have had a player sent off. It was just one of those days, and it was a ridiculously hot day. You know, it was one of those games that was a frustration for us because we felt that we should have won that game, and they've had their difficulties, but they'll also come into this game knowing exactly their situation. They need to play percentage football. They need to play smart football. They're not going to come to our place to entertain anybody. They're coming to pick points up. And we have to be prepared to be able to deal with whatever they throw at us or the challenges that they put in our way by whether it be gamesmanship or whatever. It's just a part and parcel of, championship football. You've got to win games in different ways, and so we have to be prepared for everything.
Thank you very much.
Okay, cheers.
Oh, no. I was looking at the ages of the back five, Max included, and the average is 24 years old. You've got 3 homegrown players in there. They're either hitting their peak or coming into the peak. Can you see a platform to build stability there at the back and keep that group together for?
Well, I mean, the very fact that you've brought those statistics out would say that the fact that they're in there means that they are our best options at the moment, and the fact that they are at the ages that they are would suggest that that is the case. But again, there's no point trying to, why make a statement like that? Because we'll always try and improve. And whenever you're trying to build a squad and improve a squad, that means everybody's up for replacement or renewal if the sort of route doesn't continue along the pace that you want. So yes, it's a really promising situation that we have younger players currently filling places which are really important within the side, and some of those players have made huge strides in just this season alone, never mind the last 2 or 3. So when you consider it in those terms, it's I think for the football club in particular, not just us in the present, but for the football club, it's a promising situation. But promising doesn't mean actual, and we always have to remember that it's about moving. It's about trying to move from A to B, and it's about not ever being complacent about that.
Those huge strides that they've made, has that encouraged you to play to switch to the back four and giving you a bit more confidence that they can?
Well, look, yes. The simple answer is yes, because one of the reasons that in games recently as well, we've added another defender on there to try and keep things tight towards the end. It's about doing that to protect something, and the bigger picture would be the earlier part of the season we felt we needed to play with a 3 at the back and have 3 in midfield and have 2 up front, and what you lose with that is width. Hence why we played with more expansive wide players in that system. So it's always about trying to balance, and sometimes individuals become casualties of systems. But I've always have been and always will be think more about what the group of players needs rather than what my preference is, because I've played in a back 5 myself. I was brought up in that, actually, in the 80s, and it's not something I particularly like. I like playing with two up top, but I also like the fact that at the moment we have forwards who actually our strengths are playing with a three. So it doesn't matter what I like. It's about what the team, what our squad gives us the best chance of doing. And we have a squad of players at the minute which is really quite adaptable, and I like that too, because what it doesn't do, it doesn't pigeonhole us in any sort of category in terms of they have to play this or have to play that. We have a number of players who are really versatile, but we have a squad of players which are able to play different ways, and I think that is something that is a strength of ours, actually. So yeah, I'm relatively pleased with how things are moving forward, but we're still miles away from what we want to be.
So was there a point in the season where you thought this group of players have developed enough to be able to switch that to that back four at all? Because you say you started.
Well, look, it'd be easy to say, yeah, but look, there's always a risk involved. So there's no point trying to answer it with any certainty. Whenever you make decisions in terms of changing shape, there are big risks with that. Of course there are. And one of the biggest risks is that you come unstuck on the first attempt at that. But like I say, it's easy to make those decisions when you know you've got intelligent players and when you've got players who are onside. So even when players don't necessarily like playing the way that you're playing, if they're onside, they'll do everything that they can to make sure that the team functions before themselves. And that is, again, that's something that we've worked hard to try and develop.
Has there been any update on the contract situation for the 6 or 7 players for deals in December?
No. They need to be playing for contracts, and although there may be developments with individuals, it's not necessarily appropriate to talk about those, because there will be speculation on players, but no, it's important people have goals to achieve, and if one of look, I've said before, they're playing for a contract somewhere, so I'd rather than play for a contract here.
Just on the turnaround again, when you look at Huddersfield, who've appointed their fourth manager this season, and given your experience that you've had throughout your career, say at Watford and Southampton, what's the difference here in culture that provides the stability that?
That's not really a question for me. Or look, I'll try and give it from my perspective, and I think I understand where you're coming from. But what I have to do is detach myself in some ways from how people feel, because as long as I have a clarity of understanding in what I'm trying to do and what I as a part of a team are trying to do, I don't really want survival mode. To me, is to get everybody pulling in the same direction. It's not going out on a limb and trying to survive myself. It is every manager and coach who's out there at some point will be in a survival mode. But that doesn't mean, when pressure is on, it doesn't mean isolating yourself or anybody else. In my book, anyway, it's about trying to pull together what we have in common and work at the important side of it to try and, it's about buying time, and time's one thing that you don't really have a lot of in the modern game. I can't give you an idea what it feels. I can tell you what it feels like to be sacked when you not when you don't expect it, but at certain clubs they have a system where they will replace, and that's fine as well. I don't have a problem with that. I've been at places where at Watford I lasted longer than I thought because of COVID. The pandemic stretched my contract a bit longer. I didn't expect to be there until after May anyway. And that's not me being facetious, it's just a realistic point of view that when I went in there with Craig, we said, let's go and have a bit of fun. And I thought we did really well, actually, to turn things around there. But you have to understand the type of environment you're going into. And certainly what clubs always have to do is ignore my needs as a manager. So when clubs feel that it's in their best interest to make a change, they will make a change, because there is always a threshold where the punters either lose patience, or more importantly, or as importantly, not more importantly, as importantly, there is a lack of belief in whoever's in that hot seat. That threshold, once you go past that, things will happen, things will change. So it's every club's different, and there are so many things that you have to take into consideration. Don't ever think it's an easy job for owners. Say like at this place, for instance, where our owners here have a very care what the fans think, care what it means in the public domain. And then there are other clubs where it's just purely on a business sense. It's very hard to generalize, but there are lots of factors which will have an influence on pulling that plug. And the other big thing is financial stuff as well. Depends on exit clauses and all that type of stuff. So, that's it.
So not the first one. That's Watford have got rid of pretty abruptly. Just Alex Scott is on 9 bookings at the moment. Does that play into your conscience when you're picking the team selection, when you look at the upcoming fixtures at all?
Again, yes and no. So is Joe. Joe and him are both on 9. You'll see tomorrow. I suppose is the answer to that. But look, what I don't also want to do is stop people being what they are. Once you start making players overly conscious of it, does it? Look, we deal with injuries. We'll have to deal with suspensions. That's the nature of what it is.
I'm just wondering, and this is out of curiosity because there's been obviously no problem with scoring goals, but I think Bristol City are 23rd in shots outside the box in the Championship season. I think only Bristol City and Gillingham haven't scored a goal outside the box this season. Is that a conscious decision on your part to?
No, it's not. It's a stat which is a bit of an anomaly for me. Maybe it says quite a lot about the fact that we produce chances from wide positions as well. I think that's something that, there are sides who, and I'm not just talking about crossing the ball aerially, I'm talking about getting into advanced areas. Maybe that's something to do with it. Because teams also, because we are a counter-attacking side, quite often you're talking about 1v1s. A lot of our goals come from those types of situations. It's probably a culmination of a lot of different things together. Believe me, I would love a couple of worldies from outside the box, and so would the players, but I can't honestly sit here and tell you that there is a notion that we don't want to shoot from outside the box. It's probably to do with our style of play. But I don't look again. I think one of the things with statistics and analysis these days is people do tend to rely so heavily on that, and I've even noticed with some of these the Sky and whoever the other ones are, I don't even know who they are. They're even bringing lots of stats into the equation now. It's important to have statistics to analyse, and we certainly try and we have performance indicators, but it's not the Bible or the Quran, to be politically correct. It is, it's, you have to think in context, you have to think about why statistics, you can make statistics look good for you, look bad for you, you can do whatever you want. But there has to be a context, and to have context, you use your football brain. And that is one of the big things that is very important, is that we think about the context of the players that we have, how we're working, how we actually play. And some statistics are relevant because, you know, one of the big things that we use statistics for is to analyse ourselves, to make sure that the things that we're not doing well, that we try and improve at. You know, and that's one of the things that is, it's not always about measuring against other people. It's, and I've said this loads of times in the past, we measure performance against ourselves first, because that is the key to improving us internally. We'll be better at some things than other teams, and they'll be better at some things than us, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's good or bad. It just means that that's what it is. We're different.
Thanks. Cue a worldie.
Yeah?
Cue a worldie tomorrow night then.
Hi, Nigel.
Hi.
It's a very young squad here at Bristol City, but do you think in recent months they've kind of developed the trait of almost being a bit more shrewd or streetwise now, being able to see out games a bit more comfortably?
I think the seeing out games bit comes from, I think, a collective confidence as well, and a belief in not themselves but just each other as well. Some of our younger players have been right from the outset quite mature as well anyway, so again, it's not I don't think there's a straightforward answer to that. I think we've become more accomplished as a team, as a group of players, and the players are able to make better decisions out on the pitch. I think that's that would be my simple answer to that question, is they have a more assured feel to them, to how they are themselves.
And sorry to bring up more stats, but Wigan have it's not a complicated one. Wigan have conceded the most goals out of any other team in the league this season.
Yeah, but that's before. So they've had two other managers, and they've got a new guy now, and so yeah, I fine. But they've also been pretty tight in the last two games. So we expect it to be a tough game, and them to be very organised, and for them to not take too many risks. Which means that we have to show qualities that are in terms of patience, but also we have to be very focused to try and get the 3 points.
And you mentioned about probably going to sit back a bit more. With less space probably in behind, do you think the game might kind of lean towards a more of an Anis Mehmeti, what he might offer in between the lines?
He may have a big role to play, but again, it's always good to have different options, and we do. This is what I was alluding to earlier. We have different options, which is gives us different dimensions to how we can play if need be. I mean, we've not always been the best possession side in the world, but we're better this year than we were last year, and so we'll see how it goes. It's just about trying to get across the line and get 3 points. That's really, that's all I'm really bothered about, actually.
And just finally on Joe Lowe, he scored his first professional goal the other day.
Yeah,
good to see him getting off to a good start on his loan move.
Absolutely, he's a lad who's developed quite a bit this season through captaining the 21s. He had a spell with the first team, which for the most part it was really good. He had a difficult experience with his debut, but that will in time help him, I'm sure. So I'm pleased for him. Yeah.